It was heartbreaking. I mean, there's no other way to put it. So he decided to go ahead and get a cocaine addiction, left his wife, and he ended up dying, and his business went down. And I had no way to get my money back. What made this different than 2008? I mean, I don't have a crystal ball to say that it won't happen again. Where I was living, one of my neighbors was just buying properties right and left, and he couldn't keep up. And then when the market crashed...
Gail is a retired NASA professional who has built a successful career in real estate. With her real estate license since 1984, she has excelled as a real estate investor and as a referral agent and earned $300,000 a year at max. And now she's ready to empower others with her valuable insights.
How long does it take normally for someone to get established in the real estate industry?
I would say I would tell folks to go ahead and anticipate. It's a mindset of scarcity as far as I'm concerned. And I come from a mindset of abundance. If someone tells me no, I thank them because I'm closer to that yes with the next customers. If you know anything about a monarch butterfly, you'll see them coming out of the cocoon and your first instinct is, oh, I need to help them. Well, if you help them, they don't get the strength in their wings to be able to survive. Everything that I've been through, I've survived. So anything coming up, I know I can survive. I got friends in Canada saying, hey, are you guys going to build a wall here? Right. Because they, you know, hello.
So, Gail, I am someone who has heard a lot about real estate, but practically I do not have any idea about real estate. So I'll just give you the floor as soon as I can to start from the basics about what is real estate, how do you make money through real estate, what is, more importantly, what is the correct way of earning money through real estate, because, you know, in online these days, many people are like selling courses, setting up scams about real estate, about how they're giving like get rich quick type of information through real estate. So I want to know, how do you actually make money through real estate?
Okay, well, that's an excellent question, and it's got a lot of different prongs to it. First off, let's take the traditional real estate agent. Okay, this is a person that goes ahead and decides to get their real estate license, and that way they can buy and sell property to the public. They act as an agent. Most of them join the National Association of Realtors and their local board, so they get the designation of realtor. So that's the big difference between a real estate agent and a realtor. You cannot use the term realtor unless you are part of the National Association. So that's just the kind of basics of it. So how do you make money in it? That's really...
Can you elaborate more on like what is a realtor for my audience?
Yeah, a realtor is basically someone that has been educated in the mechanics and the law involved with real estate transactions and home ownership, and then they promise to be very ethical and make sure that they look out for the interests of the general public. So when you go and you decide that you want to buy a house or a condo, a piece of land, or anything else like that, one of the natural paths that people will take is to go ahead and contact a real estate agent that can guide them. And, you know, the sellers, they sometimes say, well, I want to sell my house, but I don't want to pay that darn real estate commission because it's so expensive. And what people don't realize is what an agent actually does for them. First off, they get them to the closing table, either the buyer or the seller. That's important. You have to write the contracts correctly. You have to receive an earnest money deposit to prove that you're serious about completing the transaction on that property. And then the agent will guide both the buyers and sellers to the conclusion of a obviously happy transaction. Okay. Even more so, there's an entirely different layer to it now, and that is pre-approvals instead of pre-qualifying someone. When you approve someone, you've talked to a lender and they have agreed based on the information that you've provided to offer the loan to them. And that right now is kind of challenging with interest rates constantly going up, and that will keep a buyer from actually being able to complete the transaction, because a lender will look at them and go, oh, well, you know, it's going to be kind of close here and I don't feel comfortable about this. So a lot of folks will go ahead and rely on private lenders, or they'll rely on other ways and means to actually come up with the cash, including asking the seller. And seller financing, seller carrybacks have become very popular nowadays. And that's one avenue. So keeping back to what an agent does is they basically have a fiduciary relationship with the public to ensure that when they want to buy a property, either a residence or a piece of land or a commercial property or an investment property, that they go ahead and make sure that everybody's handled fairly and equitably and legally. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. I've been licensed since 1984. I've seen a ton of changes in the industry. And currently, right now, everybody's kind of wondering what the situation is with the economy. And I will tell you that real estate is in cycles. It goes up, it goes down. It's been like that since forever. And we are right now kind of in a what I prefer to call a price correction economy right now, where prices, because of the supply and demand, they were going stupid crazy and people couldn't afford them. And they were getting into bidding wars and all this other crazy stuff. So an agent can help you navigate that aspect of it and make sure that you get your deal in front of the seller so that they can make a decision as to whether they want to buy or sell.
So how do you exactly make money out of it? What is the basic business plan which is used in the real estate industry?
Okay, keeping with agents for right now, the plan and what happens is, and I talk about this in my book that's getting ready to drop. People think that real estate agents make a bunch of money, carloads of money on each transaction because they're like, oh, you're in real estate. But I break that down a little bit more into my book because real estate commissions are not set by law. That's one thing that we cannot do. So let's just take the average 6% transaction and $200,000. They make $12,000 off that transaction, the entire commission. Now, if you list it, you get half of that. If you list your own or you sell it, you get half of that. But if you sell your own listing, you get the entire $6,000 because you split it with your broker. And then you have
what is listing?
What part it?
What is listing? Like, what do you mean by listing? Can you explain?
Listing, that's an excellent question. And what happens when a buyer or a seller wants to sell their property, they will oftentimes reach out to an agent or they'll try to sell it on their own. That's basically a listing. When an agent goes and says, hey, I can help you sell your property, and this is what I'll do for you, and this is how the outcome will look. So that listing is actually a property, and it goes into the multiple listing service, and then that agent will go ahead and advertise it to try to get them a sale. So it breaks down into, you take that $6,000, saying you're getting half, you split it with your broker, so they get half, $6,000, you get half. You have fees that are involved with becoming an agent. You have expenses like got to get a decent car. Your insurance goes up because you have people in your car. You have to pay annual dues. So that money gets pared down pretty quickly. So if you look at it in a different perspective, average agent makes about $17,000 a year net. Okay. So you definitely need to either list a property every month or sell a property every month to increase that $17,000. And it's ironic because our licenses are usually renewed on a, every 2 years. And you'll find out whether agents want to stick with it because when they get there and they either excited about the industry or they're shell-shocked and then go ahead and decide if they want to keep their license or, give it up because it wasn't exactly what they were expecting. And then realtors can also work in not only residential, we can work in commercial. But when you get into commercial, although the commissions are much higher, the time to close is much longer, and you can't guarantee that you're going to get that property closed. So you have to have some, a way to support yourself or, secondary income in order to get, fully established.
How long does it take normally for someone to get established in the real estate industry?
I would tell folks to go ahead and anticipate 6 months. Okay,
that is not a lot of time, right?
No, it really isn't. Because right now it's taking about 8 weeks or so to get a property closed. So even if I were to sell a property right now, I won't get paid for 2 months. So, it also could be faster. It could be a little bit less. But in order to go ahead and really be successful as a real estate agent, you need to get with a company that can go ahead and show you the ropes and get you started. A lot of folks, including me, have been mentors to folks that have gotten into real estate and to get them started. Because as soon as you get into the real estate company or real estate business, forget everything you learned in school, because now you're getting into the practicals. That stuff will help you, of course, but when it gets down into actually having, the knowledge base, you're always learning in this business. If someone comes to you and says, hey, I know everything about real estate, run, because it's impossible to know everything about this business. So you get a good company, you get a good mentor, you absorb everything like a sponge. You offer to help people in your company that are doing better than you. And a lot of them will definitely be more than happy to help you get successful, because when one person's successful, everybody comes successful in this business. So starting out, I would say be enthusiastic, optimistic, learn as much as you can, decide what you want to specialize in. For example, when I have somebody says, hey, Gail, I really want you to help me get started in this. One of the first questions I ask is, do you like to list properties or do you want to be a sales agent? Okay. Of course, you have to be able to do both, but they're kind of two different trajectories, if you will. Listing properties takes a different set of skills than actually getting out there and working with negotiating and, the different sales techniques and everything that you would need working with a customer. It's more like, if someone comes to you and says, I want to be able to market, I want to be able to talk with sellers, I want to be able to help them get their property sold, and you market differently. And if you're a sales agent, you're out there every day showing the ropes. You're getting out there with the buyers. You're showing them properties. You're putting in contracts. And right now in this industry and in this market, you're hoping one of them sticks. But it's a really interesting profession, and one that's can offer folks, even if they decide they want to get into it part-time, an opportunity to make some side money.
So it seems like this profession is deals a lot with people, and you have to convince people in order to become successful in the real estate business, right? So according to your experience, what are some of your most valuable lessons you have learned about people and convincing people by being involved in this industry for such a long time?
Well, it's not so much convincing folks, because they either want to or they don't. It's more like people will do business with those that they know, like, and trust. Okay. So you have 30 seconds to gain their trust and their confidence that you're going to be able to help them. And what you're actually doing is you're working with people making the biggest decision, the biggest buying decision of their lives. And they're buying a home, and you can never lose sight of that. When you start talking big numbers with this, your customers and clients, the people that you put under contract are called clients. You have to be able to provide the necessary knowledge and skill set to get them closed. So when I show people properties, they know immediately if they want to buy that particular property or we need to keep looking. And if you're going to be buying property right now, you have to be willing to and able to make a decision, and that buying decision, like pretty much right away. Because Mark, everything's going up so fast. So I would say that if you do find an agent that you resonate with, and you do find a property that you feel that you could live there, jump on it, buy it, put in an offer. Worst they can say is no. And, but it's mainly just getting the confidence of folks and saying, hey, look. And then another thing new agents do, I don't mean to digress, but this is kind of important. They bug their friends and families about, oh, look, I've got my license and I know you want to buy property. They become kind of aggressive, and that's not the best approach. What I found that was more successful is to say, hey, do you know anybody? This is a better sideline in. Do you know anybody that might want to buy or sell real estate today? And the answer might be, yes, me. Or it might be, I got a friend that wants to do it. But you ask it in a pretty, passive way, they're going to know. I mean, you start, wearing your name tag everywhere, and you got a magnetic sign on the side of your car. But the main thing is not to take it personally if they list it with somebody else. If they list their property or they buy a real estate property from someone else. What I like to say is, a lot of agents get mad. They take it personally. Okay, there could be something that you don't know that was driving their decision, right? So you congratulate them. You offer to say, hey, let me see if I can find a buyer for your house. But you know that they settled for the second best agent out there when they went with somebody else besides you. That's kind of how I look at it anyhow. But you just can't take it personally. And if you go in and you're going to list a property, and they don't list it with you because they found that they don't really want to have you personally sell it, don't take that personally either. There could be some other reason. Like they got a friend in the business or a relative in the business that they want to list with. It's hard not to take things personally. But what I do is when someone tells me no, I don't say they're rejecting Gail. I say they're rejecting what I'm offering them at that particular time. So there's always deals out there. People look at it as like, oh, it's cutthroat. Everybody's after each other. It's a mindset of scarcity as far as I'm concerned. And I come from a mindset of abundance. If someone tells me no, I thank them because I'm closer to that yes with the next customer, see? So it's hard not to be discouraged sometimes. And that's when you need to be around people that will lift you up. And that's when it's important to be around folks that will help you in showing you the ropes. Like,
can you explain what do you mean by mindset of abundance?
Mindset of abundance. Mindset of abundance is a way of thinking of life in general. There's people that are scrambling around. Oh my gosh, they don't have enough. It's scarce. I better grab it while I can. But I believe that you attract what you put out there. So if you put out negative, you're going to actually have negative, it seems, that's in your mind and your heart. And with a place of abundance, you realize that it's infinite. They're never going to run out of properties. You're never going to run out of buyers, or you're not going to ever run out of sellers. And you look and become creative in that and realize that the universe, if you will take care of you and will provide to you. So it's a difference between thinking, oh, there's not enough, and okay, I believe that there is enough. So that's kind of in a nutshell, the difference between the mindsets.
Yeah. I think this kind of mindset puts you in a relaxed state. And I think that being in that relaxed state helps you to stay calm. And when you're calm, you can take better decisions, right?
Absolutely. You are absolutely correct in that.
So let's say you are a real estate seller and you saw a potential customer, like maybe they're just visiting the house, they're just seeing what it's around like, and you have to grab their attention now in order to get a sale. And so how do you do that? What are some of your secret tricks that you can apply to turn someone into a customer.
Okay, are you talking about a seller selling their home themselves?
Yes.
Or are you talking about, okay, let's take that approach first. Okay, a seller taking, trying to find a seller themselves or a buyer themselves. There's a lot of things going on there. First off and foremost that comes to mind is safety. Okay, you're letting a person into your home. You better darn be sure that they're not going to do something to harm you or your family or your, kind of snatch some of your possessions along the way. So you have to be very careful with that. Now it's doable. So once you get past all that, now you get into the negotiation part. Okay. And that's one of the reasons that some people don't like to list with an agent, because they're like, oh, I got to pay you all this money in commission. But most of the time, I can show sellers how they actually save money with me, because the negotiation part of a transaction is so important. But you actually have an, emotional attachment to that house. You're trying to negotiate, from a place of actually emotion rather than a place of knowledge. And that's when an agent can also help you, because it's hard to sit there and work directly with a buyer. If you're got one property and you have an agent that's done this hundreds of times and they know all the tips and tricks. Now, also, when a seller will go ahead and run an ad, they get all jazzed up because the phone starts ringing. They don't know how to pre-qualify an individual on the phone to find out if they actually can complete the transaction if they're interested. We're trained in that. Okay. You have to be able to, you don't want people walking through your house that can't buy it. You don't want people to think that they can buy a house and they can't afford it. There's just a lot of different things and different tentacles that go into that decision. So it's possible. I have sold properties myself that I've owned, and that's how I know how hard it is to be on the other side of that negotiation table. Okay, so you get all past that.
Yes.
Then you have to get the financing. You have to be able to work with lenders. You have to guide your buyer to a lender, because let's just take the scenario. You find a buyer who wants to buy your house. They put it under contract. Then what? They have to come up with the money. So we have, people that we work with in the industry. We know people that make these type of loans and mortgages. So we can also guide in that way. Okay, so assume that the sellers got past that. They got a way for the person to fund the deal. You got to get to the closing table. How do you do that? How do you know the timing? How do you know the requirements? Do you need a termite inspection or a home inspection? Is it an FHA or VA loan? All these different, things. We're trained in that. A one-off, what we call a one-off, someone selling their own property may or may not have that knowledge, or they bought their house 10 years ago and things have changed so much that they don't have that necessary guidance. Now, when I say that I show sellers how I can save them money, it's usually because of the negotiation part. It's usually because I know what the properties around it are selling for. I know the demand. I know how to go ahead and make sure that they get the highest amount that they can, because what was happening with this, bidding wars is people would offer $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 over what the house is listed for just so they can get it. Now that sounds awesome and terrific until you have an appraiser come in there and say, what were y'all thinking? This house is only worth this. They won't say it like that, of course, but you say, okay, Mr. Seller and Mrs. Seller, we didn't get the appraised price. Okay, this is what it sold for, or this is what the appraiser is saying. Now, I've come back as an agent and had conversations with the appraiser and provided comparable sales to help them in their job, and basically to ask them how they came up with those prices. So now you have an appraisal that says that the house isn't worth what everybody wants to buy and sell it for. Then what? If you were selling that house yourself, you would probably just throw the deal out. We can't do it. We can't close. Okay. What agents will do is look for ways to close. See, that's our whole goal. So even though it seems like it's real easy to go in there and sell your own house, it's sort of like, an attorney going to court to represent themselves. That's kind of hard to do too. So it's not a big deal to bring somebody else in that has that experience and expertise to make sure that you're not opening your house to an axe murderer. You're got people that can actually buy it. And you're not going to have all your jewelry go out the door with them. So there's good things about agents.
So what are the tricks or techniques that agents use to close a deal usually?
We're always thinking. We're always trying to figure out ways to make it easier and more timely for people on both sides. We look at schedules. Like, for example, when I know that we're getting close to getting the deal closed, I'll go ahead and get on the title company's or the attorney's calendar so that we can make sure that we're going to get that closed. But we are always in constant contact with both, the listing agent or sales agent. If I'm representing the seller, I keep in touch with them, let them know exactly what's going on. Because even though someone that's been in the industry for like as long as I have to push myself back and remind myself, okay, this is the place of knowledge that they're coming from. So I have to make sure that I fill in the blanks for them. And I also have to make sure that they feel comfortable enough with me to be able to ask me questions as they come up. And the other thing that I found that agents won't do, and I don't know why, maybe this is because of my training with NASA, if there's a problem that comes up, they ignore it and quit answering their phone and email. Okay? Not the way to handle a concern or problem that comes up. You have to be able to always problem solve. You have to be able to think outside the box, as the coined phrase goes. And you have to actually keep your eye on the prize of getting everybody in that transaction closed and come up with win-win situations.
Yeah. At the very beginning of this conversation, you talked about interest rates going up. And a few days ago, I've heard of bank going bankrupt, the Silicon Valley Bank. So I am not fully aware of it, like what's going on and how is it impacting the real estate industry. So can you explain what is it actually going on right now and how is it actually impacting the real estate industry?
Oh, that's a great question. You have to look at what's going on with these banks. Okay, first off, they're regional. They were not funded quite as good as they should have been. Their management was not as best as they possibly could be. And, I'm not a big finger pointer, okay? But I will tell you this. In 2018, the former administration rolled back a massive amount of regulations on the banking industry to make it, quote, easier for them, okay? So there wasn't that reporting requirement that was going on. There are people that knew that these banks were risky and going down, but it wasn't brought up. Now, we'll talk about Silicon Valley for a minute because you brought that one up. They're really looking at that. They're really investigating that because they are wanting to ensure that the folks running that bank didn't realize what was going to come down and sell their stock and pull out of there and lots of different things like that. You can't do like what the considered insider trading and something like that. There was a couple other banks, again, same regional thing, same thing with the rollback of regulations and reporting to the feds on what the bank's health is. Those are, really important things. And even the most interesting part of all this is what has social media, what the impact of social media has been on all this. Okay.
Really?
Yeah. There's people, the sky's falling, everything's going to, heck in a handbasket. Oh my gosh. And it's causing a panic, if you will. Okay.
Damn.
And that, I was listening to the news the other day and some people that had money in those banks were going to the bank and quite shocked to find out that they actually have to order their money because it's not actually held in the bank itself. So in the cases of what's happened with these bank failures, the folks are definitely going to get their money back from the FDIC, the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. Every account is guaranteed $250,000 in insurance. So if you have less than that, great. Usually if you have more than that, oh well. But what they're saying is they're going to exceed that $250,000 to make the depositors whole. Now, how long that's going to take is going to be a little while. So where do they get the money? They get it from the people running the bank. You know, they're going to be basically held responsible for this. The shareholders are going to lose their money. They're going to lose their investments if they can't make the folks solvent that are running these banks and then also helping the people that have money in it. Okay, so there'll be a couple more bank failures. I think Republic's being looked at right now. But one of the things that's really fascinating about Republic is, you know, the government has said, we're not bailing out your banks. Okay, that's on you. So the industry itself, other bankers are actually coming to the, you know, to support Republic in this particular case, the bank Republic, because they want to make sure they don't fail. But they also want to make sure that the banking industry in itself keeps solvent. Now, what made this different than 2008 is a lot of different things. But mostly the things that caused the bank and the market crash in 2008, there's new regulations in place, and that shouldn't happen again. I mean, I don't have a crystal ball to say that it won't happen again. But everything that happened to line up that perfect storm in 2008, people are like, oh my gosh, this is just another 2008. No, not really. There's other ways that they've put into place behind the scenes that's going to prevent complete catastrophic meltdown of what we experienced in 2008.
I tried wrapping my head around what happened in 2008, but to be honest, I did not completely succeed at it, because I found it to be a little bit complicated. So can you just explain what happened in 2008 and how it impacted the real estate industry and other economies in the world?
Don't feel bad about knowing what didn't, or what not knowing what went on in 2008. There's a whole bunch of us, including me, going, how could that have happened? Okay. But basically what happened is we were on another run. Real estate prices were going sky high. I mean, stupid sky high. They weren't sustainable. And they were just typically like we got going on right now. Except the banks were making what was called subprime loans. In order to qualify for a subprime loan, you had to be able to fog a mirror. In other words, have a pulse. In other words, nothing was there. Actually, you know, you weren't qualified on anything. You want a house? Hey, no problem. We'll give you a 3% loan. Oh, you only have 3%, 5% down? No problem. That's what happened in a nutshell with 2008. Okay, prices were going up. We had borrowers that really, and this is only one aspect of 2008. We had borrowers that were sketchy, right on the line, that banks will make them a loan. And then whatever happened, with their personal, you know, situation, either the interest rate got moved up because it was an adjustable, or they lost their jobs, or lots of different things that happened. And it just basically caused a massive meltdown. But the subprime loan will never happen again. We have something in place now called the Dodd-Frank Act. And everybody gets all wiggly about the Dodd-Frank Act. Oh my gosh, the government's back in it and everything. Basically, in a nutshell, what Dodd-Frank says is you have to pre-approve your borrower. You have to make sure they have the ability to pay. You have to make sure that they have enough money in that property to make sense, like, you know, 15, 20% down, not nothing down. And also, when you have seller financed loans, when a seller takes the mortgage and actually makes a mortgage themselves. Yeah. There's a thing called having a Dodd-Frank compliant mortgage, where you have to make sure that your borrower can pay you back. And, you know, they're not really off the hook for that, but they have to make sure that the loan makes sense to the borrower, because you never, ever want to put a borrower either with, you know, institutional lending from a bank or a private lender, or even relying on the seller. You don't want a default. You want to make sure that everything, they can stay in the house. That's the whole goal.
In 2008, why were they giving loans so easily? I mean, isn't it a common sense thing that if you are giving a loan to someone, you would want to know about who they are and whether they will be able to repay your loan or not? So why were they giving the loans so easily to people?
Well, that's a really good question, and we often ask ourselves that. But me personally, I think it was greed. I think they were trying to get their assets deployed, their money out there, you know, lending to people. You know, banks will pay you like 1 or 2%, and then they go and they loan your money out, you know, 3 and 5%. The interest rates were very low. I'll just say that. You know, they were going in like low, not to the previous standards that we saw, but they were going like 8%, you know? So if a bank can sit there and get 8% and then give their borrowers or their savers 1%, it makes sense. They were putting cash out there without really effectively looking at what they were actually doing. So when we got these defaults, when the property prices started to stabilize and come down, people were finding that they owed a lot more money on their mortgage than their house was actually worth. So it just was just a culmination of, you know, a mess. But basically, banks wanted to get the money out there thinking that they could make it on the borrowers and get it back.
So at that time, the interest rates were actually going down, and now it is actually going up, right? So what kind of implications do you think it is having on the overall economy and in the real estate industry?
Well, I'll back up to 1980 for a minute, when I bought my first house. We were having a ridiculous recession in the United States. I mean, it was just like going up by the minute. I got a 13.75% loan, and I was just so jazzed about it. People were actually looking to use their credit cards to buy property because interest rates were going up so high. Okay, so I was rejoicing. There was a time when interest rates stayed between 7 and 9%. Okay, the second house I bought, the seller bought it with a 5.75% loan back in the 60s. And I thought, dang, can you imagine, you know, that's what they were back then? Because when I really started getting active, I talk about this also in my book, when I started working for my dad in his real estate office, interest rates stayed between 8.5% and 9%, maybe 9.25%. That was it for years. That's what we were having. Okay. And then someone got the really good idea. Let's make the interest rates 2%, 3%. Everybody was buying, whether they could afford it or not. Everybody was buying. So in my opinion, it was artificially low, which increased the demand for properties. Because now people could qualify for a loan, you know, made $30,000 a year. They could qualify for a $300,000 house if you can make the numbers work well. Well, that's not sustainable either. So when you have a very big demand on a product, as you know, supply and demand, that was making the prices go ridiculous. Okay. I mean, they were going up to a point where they were not absolutely sustainable. And it got to a point where people could not afford to buy a house anymore. And that's kind of what we were coming off of. So what's happened now is what they've done is price it, you know, course correct a little bit here, because to raise the interest rates, they had to raise them quickly, unfortunately. And that's why it looked like we had one after another, and look how high they are. But look what is realistic. You know, I just got finished saying that they were like 7, 8%. But is a 2 or 3% mortgage really sustainable, especially in the economy that we have? Absolutely not. It's not even possible. So it looked great. Everybody was buying until there was not enough houses to buy. There was not enough property to buy. There was not enough supplies around to buy. And then even worse, when we got the COVID pandemic, that caused transportation problems, supply issues, workers, and the supplies were going super high too, which drives the builders, which drives the price. It was all just a perfect storm of a hot mess, if you will. So now what's happening is it's starting to stabilize. The property values are either stabilizing or going back to an actual corrected price, an actionable, marketable price, a sustainable price. And unfortunately, those that got mortgages that were higher, properties that weren't worth what they were actually really were worth, are going to be affected significantly by this. Hopefully they'll all stay in their house for long enough that it'll break even. But it's coming around. Some markets in the United States are, they're dropping, double-digit dropping. Places like San Francisco, places like, in the Northeast, there's a lot of cities that have this impact because people are leaving the areas. They're readjusting and moving to another area, thereby jacking the prices up on it again. But there's a lot of relocations that are going on for different reasons, and that also drives the real estate market prices when people leave. A lot of people leaving California to go to Arizona and Texas. Well, Texas, because people are drawing there, those prices are going to just keep going up and up and up,
So just to break it down for my viewers, interest rate is one of the many factors that government uses to control the demand of the economy. So let's say the government reduces the interest rate, it will naturally encourage people to take more loans and to save up less. So what it ends up doing is you're taking more loan and you're saving less. That means you're spending more money. So as you're spending more money, the demand of things are going up, and so the economy is actually being active and running. And you said that at some point the supply of real estate was much low compared to the demand of real estate. So I can imagine the prices went through the roof. And you also said that there were many other issues as well. So how were people, how did you navigate through that chaotic situation? Because I'm imagining that since the prices of real estate went really high, people were not really buying real estate. And at that moment, you were also going through some other issues of the economy. So it must have been very hard to survive during that stage as a real estate agent. So how did you get through that kind of hardship?
Well, during the, back in the 80s, I was at the mercy of the market. Okay. I got lucky when I first got licensed. I started with a company that was like a flat fee franchise, and they only charge a certain amount, buyer, seller. Okay. And with that, I got a lot of volume. That's why I got a lot of experience really fast, because of that flat fee franchise company that I first worked with. So I was doing okay with that. When the 2008, 2009 came around, I was fortunately working for NASA at the time. Okay, so I had income that was constantly coming in, and I kind of put my investment, because by then I was just doing investments. I wasn't really as a traditional agent anymore. So I sat back and took a breather to figure out exactly what was going on. So many of my colleagues and so many of my friends lost, their houses went into foreclosure. They lost their investments. It just really tanked. What could have been different about that? Nobody had a crystal ball. But what I did was, during that time that I was taking a breather, I was looking at what was going on. I was trying to get a handle, although you talk to any economist, you talk to 12 economists, you're going to get 12 different opinions, okay?
Yeah.
None of them are going to agree. So in cases like that, I just kind of sit back and wait. What was happening after we had the market crash, everything was low, right? Everything was super low. That's unfortunately and fortunately the time to get in is when things just went down to the bottom. So that's when I started picking up properties, and that's when I started, building my own personal portfolio, because I had the knowledge in the back of my head. Everybody needs a place to live, right? My goal was to make an affordable property for them to either buy from me or to rent from me. So sometimes you just have to kind of sit back and see what's going on and not take advantage of people's misfortunes. But that's when I started really picking up my investments, was after that crash, sadly enough.
As a civilian living in the USA at that time, what was it like to experience such a drastic crash? Can you take us through your emotions and what you remember during 2008?
Oh, I remember it really well. It was heartbreaking. I mean, there's no other way to put it. Where I was living, one of my neighbors was just buying properties right and left. He was brand new in the business. I don't give advice or suggestions to anybody unless they ask me. And I really wish that he had consulted me a little bit, because he was buying 1 or 2 properties a week and he was trying to rehab them and he couldn't keep up. And then when the market crashed, he lost everything. He lost everything. There were so many other folks that I knew that just, it was depressing. It was almost as depressing. And to back up just a minute, in 2008 or 2009, I don't recall right now, the decision was made to end the shuttle program. And I was in Central Florida at the time, obviously, working for NASA. And we went right out of the stock market, or the crash, into the end of the shuttle program. And the double depression here. You had the double depression of what we were seeing with my colleagues and my neighbors and people that I knew in the real estate business. And then we had people that were affected by the aerospace aspect of it. And, thank God I was a civil servant. I actually worked for the government for NASA, but the other ones weren't so lucky. So we phased out the shuttle program, and then the market kind of went back down again, except it quickly corrected itself, because different from the Apollo program, you had actual sellers leaving their keys in their door and walking away from their properties when the Apollo program ended. And everybody's like, oh, it's going to happen again. It's going to happen again. And I was selling real estate full time then. I said, no, it's not. Nah. I said, in this area now, we've got a bunch of defense contractors. We've got a lot of different industry. Don't worry, it's all going to be okay. And it actually was, but they were panicking. Okay. And the market started to improve. And then we got back into the low interest rate thing, and then it just skyrocketed, But another aspect of that, I'll just kind of back up a little bit. Let's talk about the southwest side of Florida. Okay, I don't live in Florida anymore, but the southwest side got smashed by Hurricane Ian. And the property values down there, the average price was like $600,000-$700,000. And the insurance, you cannot get insurance after Hurricane Andrew directly on the beach anymore. All those people that you saw their houses were falling into the ocean, most if not all, had zero interest or insurance on there. So they just lost it was out of their pocket. Now they're trying to rebuild, especially in Florida, because they just lost that whole tax base of expensive properties. But the counties are not approving building permits back where they used to be because the land in which a lot of those houses sit is now in the Gulf of Mexico. It literally just pulverized and destroyed and made invisible the beaches on which those houses used to live. So now what are they going to do? Nobody knows, but I do know that that's a really tough market in the entire state, and I'm glad I'm not in it anymore. Down there, I've got a couple of properties, but it's primarily paper notes. But I digress.
Let's say somehow you are the real estate agent in that area where some kind of disaster happens and the houses gets destroyed. So how do you get out of this messy situation and thrive in the real estate business?
Well, I usually zig when others zag. I got to say that. I look at what everybody's running after and go the opposite direction. I try to find a niche. Okay. That's just always been me. Now, that talks about generally the stuff on the, on the coast. Okay. But the other markets that are strong, like I wouldn't be looking at building down there right now. Condos. People have a stigma against mobile homes, but they're an affordable housing alternative. Or buying a piece of land. Because now that this has all happened, they're going to reevaluate everything down there. They're going to reevaluate flood market or flood maps. They're going to reevaluate the building or codes, that were put in place. I mean, all these builders down there are going to have to build to 165-mile-an-hour winds. And that just jacks the price up even further, right? So I look at what others are not doing. And if they're all jumping to the coast, if they're all looking at the new construction down there, I would look at existing construction. I would look at properties that need work, that have what we call value add. Once you get the house all nice and pretty again, the price goes up. I'd be looking at those kind of investments if I was still down there, or if I was interested in investing in properties. Older properties that need some work, condos, mobile homes, land, things like that, rather than the big McMansions that they were building down there in areas that may or may not be able to be built in anymore. I mean, that's a true fact. They may not be able to get back onto like Sanibel and Captiva like they were prior. It may just end up being a strip of beach that people go to visit. And I'm trying to be optimistic.
Yeah. I think it's very hard to bounce back if you face such kind of natural disaster, especially because the houses are destroyed and you are mainly conducting businesses about the house, right? So if something happens to the houses, then obviously it's going to hamper your business in real estate. Plus, if something like that happens, then people lose their possessions along with their house. They lose their loved ones, their dear ones.
Oh, yeah.
And usually houses are one of the most expensive things that people normally invest in. And so if they lose that, then they psychologically get a very strong negative hit. And it is not easy to bounce back after that. And if people who are your customers are not does not have the paying ability, then obviously you as a business will not be able to thrive at that moment. So I think it's I think it's very important to have a strong character at that time. And I obviously know that it's easier said than done, but it is very important to have a very strong character and to believe that times will get better and try to spot opportunities which will help the time to get better.
I absolutely agree. It's, again, part of my mindset. I always believe, good or bad, what happens, I'm supposed to experience at that particular time in life. It is something, a journey that I am to go down. Excuse me. Personally, me, in 2004, we had 4 hurricanes in 6 weeks. Okay. If you can imagine, yeah, they were coming from every direction. And I lost my roof. It kind of like collapsed. Kind of was now in my bedroom upstairs. Okay. I mean, it was just the most horrific experience of my life, losing my roof like that. And I contracted with a roofer. You know, I mean, all the stuff in my bedroom was pretty much soggy. You know, it even actually came through the walls down to the first floor. So there was an effect down there too. So I hired a very reputable company and they were going to put my new roof on. Okay, they did. Except they kind of forgot something. It was a flat roof, a parapet wall, and flat roofs. Everybody's like, oh my gosh, no, you don't do that. Well, if you do it right, it's not a big deal. He kind of forgot to put roof drains in there. Okay? He actually forgot to put the roof drains into the house. So when they went to go do the inspection, they told him, dude, you got to put roof drains in. Around the same time, the September of 2004, and I can't remember what the name of that darn thing was, around that time, that hurricane came in. So when you have like a parapet wall that's 3 feet tall and a flat roof, it fills up like a swimming pool. And it collapsed again. My whole brand new roof in my rebuilt house collapsed again.
Did you get injured by any chance?
What's that?
Did you get injured by any chance due to the
I
collapse?
did not. No, I didn't get injured. My daughter was living with me at the time, and she called me at work and said, Mom, the house is filling up full of water. So I kind of ran home real quick. Called the builder. The roofer. He came out. He apologized. Oh my gosh, we'll get this right. We'll fix it and everything else like that. Until he found out that his insurance company was not going to cover him. And the city where I lived at the time didn't have any type of, restitution or any way I could come back on them. They didn't even have a court or hearing set up in that particular city at the time to even have any type of, way for me to get my money back. Okay. So I was pretty upset about it. And in 2004, with all those hurricanes, roofers became millionaires. And mine was no different. The only difference was he decided to go ahead and get a cocaine addiction and left his wife, and he ended up dying and his business went down. And I had no way to get my money back. They had a fund in the state of Florida for those that lost money like me, but it was tapped out and there was no money. So I actually had to rebuild my house out of my pocket. Oh, and I'll back up just a minute. My insurance company called me the day this happened to say that they were going to come out and do an inspection on the original damage and the repairs, because with something that significant, they want to make sure that the repairs were done and the homeowner didn't pocket the money. I said, don't bother coming out. All my brand new house is sitting in my driveway right now. And I told them what happened, and they were, oh my gosh. And they're like, well, we're not going to be able to pay you either because we're considering this part of the first claim. So there was no choice. I had my mortgage company calling me saying, oh, you have to have insurance or you're in violation of your mortgage. I had my insurance company saying, too bad, so sad. And I had his insurance company just saying, oh, well. So it cost me $40,000. And I got an attorney and I did file the judgment. I got a judgment, but the dude died. So what was I going to do? So I had to brush myself off and carry on. And that was how we all did it. When something so catastrophic happens to you, 2 things happen to you. First, well, 3. You go crazy. You have a lot of empathy. And then you also have to be able to pick yourself up, brush yourself off, and then move forward. And that's what I've done in my life, is I've always had to land on my feet somehow and try to figure out what to do now at that point. So that's what I did.
As they say, time and tide waits for none. And
exactly.
Time will not wait for people. Time will not wait for you to move on. Ultimately, if you cannot move on, then what happens is that you just waste a bunch of time from your valuable life. And
yes,
even if people realize that, even if I realize that sometimes, it is actually hard to actually adopt that mindset, especially if you are deep into the grief and sorrow, whatever caused that sorrow or grief. And I think they say that if your line of the light is flat, I mean, like nothing is happening, everything is good, that it represents that you're dead. But if it's like going up and down, or like has some kind of ups and downs, this means that you're alive. So what it really means is that if you're having good times and bad times, that means you're alive. And if you're having nothing,
exactly.
If you're having a boring life, then you're dead.
Well, yeah. You're absolutely right with that, because you're going to have those life ups and downs. And it's so hard to pick yourself up. But if everything was okay all the time, you wouldn't have any gauge of, good and bad. We always have to have, opposites, goods and bads and things like that. I tried to alleviate a lot of the negative and bads that have come up. And Lord knows over the last 3 years, I've had a lot of negatives come up. But you have to realize that, and it's so hard. It almost sounds like, kind of like, if there's a better day tomorrow, you kind of feel like Annie, sitting there going, oh, the new day tomorrow and everything. But you just have to. I mean, it's hard. But then you kind of also remember the good times that you had and know that something better is right around the corner. Because if anybody can talk about having the rug pulled out from under them or life not going quite exactly what they wanted, I would be, if that was a sport in Olympics, I would medal in it, because I've had so many times that, everything's gone sideways on me, especially in the last 3 years, that I've had to figure out how to adapt and improvise, be flexible, and make sure that, get through with life.
Yeah. You said that the last 3 years have been really tough for you, and I'm imagining it's because of the COVID thing and Ukraine and Russia war and the global crazy things that have been happening recently. So, how did these kind of political changes and the changes in the environment and COVID impact the real estate business? Can you talk about that a little bit?
Oh, yeah, I could talk about that a little bit. Okay, so back to December 2019, when everything just seemed to be going along okay. It actually wasn't. My brother, I had my brother in one of my apartments because he had a heart condition, and I was trying to get him well enough to be able to have heart surgery, and I was not successful. He died, and I found him. So maybe we should look at November 2019, shall we? Things are going along okay. And then COVID hit. I got COVID in January of 2020, before it became, shall I say, fashionable. I have to laugh about it a little bit because it really, it kind of almost killed me. Okay. And I still have some lingering effects from it. I'm considered a long COVID patient. So what happened then? Okay. I had investment properties. I had tenants in those investment properties. And if someone looked really carefully at the regulations at the time, they would realize that you could not start eviction on someone that was directly infected and affected by their income, COVID related. Like I had some people that worked for hospital. I had some people that retired. And I had people that had no reason not to pay me. Okay. And then I had others that were in like the hospitality industry, because it was Cape Canaveral, Cocoa Beach right next to each other. So tourist industry is extremely important in that particular area. Well, you couldn't evict anybody. Everybody said, until you said, wait a minute, this person can pay me. They're still getting an income. And this person quit paying me, so I have to be a little bit more lenient with them. And the courts were closed, so you couldn't even file paperwork. So that's when you have to have a really good buffer in your investing plan, which thankfully I did. So I was able to go ahead and personally weather it. There were others that weren't. People that had Airbnbs, for example, they weren't allowed to bring in guests for a couple of months. Florida's a little bit different. Florida's a lot bit different. They kind of go by their own rules. So you had one side saying, come on down to see us. And then you had the other side saying, we're in the middle of a global pandemic. So you had to kind of make your decision on which direction you wanted to go. I was still looking at it as a global pandemic. And at that time, personal level, I decided that I wanted to go ahead and do some travel. And I was married at the time. My husband didn't do very well with me getting COVID, so we're in the middle of a divorce, but I digress. Wanted to go travel. So I started to liquidate some of my properties. And I had an apartment building, and that was one of the first things I got rid of. And I did lucky. I did real good on that sale. So I invested in other things, and we could talk about that later. I got mostly into mortgage notes. But, there were people that were just, lost it. They had to walk away from their investments. They had to get others to buy their investments from them. And it was a totally depressing time. I kept trying to be really optimistic. And then I started seeing people turn on each other. It got to a point in the United States where if you had what we called in NASA a dissenting opinion, where you didn't necessarily agree with somebody, and this put a whole different wrinkle in everything in the United States. People actually started attacking you if you didn't believe like them. If you said something that they felt was, against their how they feel, we used to kind of shrug it off. But no, not anymore. Everybody was just physically, or not physically, but mentally, well, sometimes physically, mentally going after each other. And it's like, whoa, where are we going with this? And even now, there's a, hypervigilance in the United States, for some of us to say, hey, peace, love, rock and roll, man. We all have to get along. And then there's others that are so entrenched in what their beliefs are, they can't even open their minds to understand their fellow human. And I don't get it, but it hasn't changed. It's still going on, unfortunately. And until we all just kind of have this moment of we're all in this together, on this little blue marble, we're going to constantly have conflicts. And I feel like a lot of these conflicts could be avoided with understanding. And if people could understand the other, and they may not agree with them, they may not adopt what they're thinking, but at least have enough self-respect or for yourself and your fellow human to be able to hear them out. That's all people want. I've traveled all over the world. I've been very lucky. My dad was in the Air Force, and my former husband was in the Navy. Everybody wants the same thing. It doesn't matter if you're in Europe. It doesn't matter if you're near a small Caribbean island. It doesn't matter. We all want to be able to be happy, healthy, raise our families, and make a living for ourselves. These are driving factors. And if everybody understood and respected that we're all having the same battles, we're all trying to do good by our families, and we're not out to harm anybody else, we should be able to figure this all out, right?
Fair.
So I don't know. It's sad what's happened, and I certainly hope it corrects itself.
Yeah. USA at one point used to be like the top one or two major economic powers in around the world, and it still is. But now it has competitors like Russia, India, China. But at some point it is to be the only one. So from being at such a driving position to going downhill gradually, and now people, I don't know how much they respect the culture of USA, but as much as I'm seeing, due to the whole the transgender thing and whatever the polarization thing during the elections, and not being able to come together as a country or as a citizen, I don't think people are viewing USA in a whole sort of positive way like it used to. I might be wrong, but that's what like I have been observing. And so do you think these kind of social changes are actually at the end of the day having an economic change? And if not, and if it's not the case, then why do you think USA in terms of economic power is like having more competition and it's going like down?
Oh, well, I can give you the opinions according to Gail, and that's all I can do. Okay. We got into a point where it became acceptable to bully and ridicule and humiliate people. Okay. In my book, that has never been acceptable. And, you know, whatever side of the political side you're on, you know, I see it more as a, you know, a macro side of it, the global harmonization. You know, when I worked for NASA, we had all kind of different countries working with us. Yeah. And our political and government might be different, but we all strive to get along. Okay. I don't want to step on anybody's toes, but we just have to kind of look at what happened. Okay. In 2014, we were all just kind of hanging out still. Everything was okay. In 2015, it changed. When you could sit there and look at someone running the United States that made it acceptable to bully, humiliate, ridicule people. If they didn't agree with something, they immediately attacked them, you know, verbally or whatever. That was never, ever, ever in my understanding of thinking or how I was raised or anything. And then I also saw the importance of having a global economy. Okay. Global being some countries have certain things that we need and other countries have certain things that we have that they need. Okay. It doesn't necessarily have to be an out and out hate competition thing. Okay. And I mean, I'm watching this with, you know, I'm raising my, my daughter's daughter. She died in a car accident. So I've got a 14-year-old in all of this mix. And I'm seeing how it's affecting her when people just, oh my gosh. And I think social media also had a lot to do with that, where you could sit there and say something to somebody and it's a scream. Okay. There's no filter. You can put stuff out there to rile people up, or you can put stuff out there to calm people down. And personally, I accept the fact that I'm a minority in this, that I believe we should all be able to get along. I believe that countries have certain things we need and we can share with them. You know, I'll say something kind of weird. Please don't judge me. I've always thought, what if we found that we were not alone in the universe? Okay. Would it be that we would say, okay, we all belong on this little blue globe. We all need to get along, and there's somebody else out there. Why can't we get along? One of the things that was amazing to me is after a mission flew, the astronauts would come back and talk to us.
Down.
And every one of them, if they were not spiritual when they went up, they sure were when they came down. And one of the things they said was, we never saw borders. We saw the world, and we never saw any borders to countries. Now, why can't we all get along? And we have to be able to get along. And I know people that were saying, well, we have a lot of foreign investors coming over here buying property. Okay. We can accommodate them. You know, we have to be, you know, mindful of what's actually going on. But why can't we have a global harmonization? I don't understand. I don't get it. I mean, when we went to live in another country, we accepted the culture. And here, nowadays, it seems that if the culture's different, that's a perfect opportunity for you to attack everything that's wrong with them. Forgetting that they're human. Everybody's human. We all have to, you know, strive to be able to, you know, look out for each other and get along, really. And I think that it's going to have to change. Something's going to have to change. We cannot have this much hatred going out of the United States. And I'm very aware of the reputation. I got friends in Canada saying, hey, are you guys going to build a wall here?
Right.
Because they, you know, hello. And, you know, I've got colleagues just all over the world, and it's kind of embarrassing, actually. And I know they ridicule us a little bit, and rightfully so. We've earned a reputation as a bunch of rude, bully, politically incorrect, society troublemakers somewhat. Okay. And we don't have to be that. And it changed, and we have to switch it. And if I can't switch it for those in the world, which I can't, I'm going to switch it in my little piece of the world. And I'm going to still treat people with respect and kindness. And I'm teaching my grandchild to be accepting of others. They're different. So what? They're different.
I feel like USA is still one of the most major economic powers, and not only economic powers, it has a worldwide cultural influence. So people should be more careful. The leaders and the political leaders, even the celebrities, should be more careful in terms of what they're injecting into the culture and politics of USA, because it not only stays within USA, but it has influence all over the world. And if you have such kind of power, then you would want to have good influence all over the world, right? Because people follow the US media, they follow the US politics, they follow the US shows, they follow the US companies. Most of the tech companies that are one of the most powerful are based from the US, right? Facebook, Microsoft, Google, they all have US origins. And so with great power comes great responsibility. And since if you're someone who has control over such a powerful economy, then you should deal with it more responsibly, because it is having an impact all over the world. And you're talking about how borderless the world is. It reminded me of Carl Sagan's Pale Blue Dot. And this is to my viewer, if you are watching this video or podcast till now, I'm very much grateful to you, because I don't think people who watch it for such a long time. And if you're doing it, thank you. And I made a video about Carl Sagan's Pale Blue Dot. And if you want to check it out, you should check it out. Or you can even search on YouTube, Carl Sagan Pale Blue Dot. And it was such a heart-touching thing that I actually first got to know about it from a Lex Fridman podcast, when Lex Fridman invited Elon Musk, and he made him read out the whole thing which Carl Sagan mentioned about our Earth in that Pale Blue Dot thing. And so what basically happened is Carl Sagan requested NASA to instruct one of the Voyager robots to turn back its camera for one last time and take a picture of the Earth. And NASA was like hesitant of it at first, but then they agreed to it, and they just took a picture. And in the picture, you can see nothing but very tiny little dust. And basically that tiny little dust is us, where it's that small planet we all live in. And basically in that dust, there is all of our history, all of our celebrities, all of our kings and peasants, and every loving couple and every hopeful child. I don't think my description is doing justice to the way Carl Sagan described it, but you should go and check it out. And furthermore, since Gail is to work for NASA, we have talked about it, and I will make another episode with her about NASA and space, since I personally love space, and I think there is a lot more to know about our universe. And if you look into the universe, then it will somehow help us to find out our origins, because we are inside the universe. So you're not outside of it. So there has to be some kind of correlation with it. So I'm looking forward to that episode as well. And so, yeah, interesting times to live in.
It's definitely interesting times, and I'm really excited about doing that episode with you because I can obviously talk about space a lot. I loved it, and it was a great career. But one of the things about what you're saying is social media, okay? Yep. How powerful social media can be. I use it for my business. I use it for my international outreach because I work with folks internationally in the real estate industry. But it can also be used for bad, and it can also be used to rile people up and cause chaos. And that's what's happening. And it's now to a point where some people can't even see what's real and what's not real. They don't know the truth. They question everything. And that's not a place to be either. You know, you have to kind of take a different approach. And my approach is that we should all be able to get along. There's absolutely no reason why we should not be able to get along. If we have differences, that's fine. But it makes no sense to me. And I think that social media majorly changed the trajectory of society in the United States, especially. You know, the impact is ridiculous. The emphasis that we put on celebrities is, you know, it's not deserved. You know, if somebody says, "Oh, I use this product," next thing you know, okay, but
yeah.
Well, look at cryptocurrency. They had a lot of people pushing that. I never looked at cryptocurrency as a investment strategy that I ever wanted to have. I would rather have stuff that I can evaluate and analyze to determine for myself. You know, I don't like having people tell me what to do or guide me in that regard. I mean, you can have people tell you what to do or tell you where to go too, for that matter. But you have to weigh it. You have to balance it. We have to come up with some kind of equilibrium here where we get back on track with everything, and that we do keep our real, you know, our reputation in the world going in a different direction than what it's going, instead of a bunch of chaos, confused people sitting over here on a piece of land that we actually took from other people. So I don't know.
Can you talk a little bit about what's the note thing in the real estate industry and how you're dealing with it, and also talk about a little bit about your book and what's unique about it and how is it going to provide value to your readers?
You come up with some great questions, and I appreciate that because it challenges my brain this morning or this afternoon. Back in the day, there used to be this level of advice of, and it was obscure number as far as I'm concerned. If you have $200 million or $2.5 million or anything like that in your bank account, you too can retire. Well, that's changed, or at least to me, it's changed. I look at cash flow. I look at what do I need every month to survive, and I attain that level. Okay, especially after going through.
One second, can you explain in simple terms what do you mean by cash flow?
Yes, cash flow is money coming into you. It's a exchange of money from someone giving you money. You know, either by a rental, or you know, they held a mortgage, or you know, any of these other things. It's how much money are you able to provide and bring into yourself, like cash flowing into your bank account. So that's the simple terms of what cash flow is. You have to figure out what you need every month, and then maybe get a little bit extra than that, instead of trying to attain, $2.5 million, I must be able to retire right now. It's not practical. So a lot of folks are trying to take a different approach with that. So how do I get money into my bank account every month? That's what the $64,000 question is. Because I don't actually work as a traditional agent anymore, but I have my real estate license, and I'm with a company called eXp Realty, which is international. I get cash flow from fellow agents when I come across a deal that someone wants to buy or sell a property, and I refer it to them. And then they give me 25% of their commission because I gave them a lead that bought or sold something. That's one way to get cash flow in every month.
Thanks.
The other way is now it seems, I'm not a virologist or anything, but it seems like the COVID pandemic is starting to kind of work its way down, either by, previous infections or vaccinations or whatever reason. It's starting to kind of correct itself in that regard. And income can come from rentals. Income can come from properties that you own, and they pay you every month. That's good. You can get, my favorite is real estate notes right now. And the reason it is because I relocated to a different state. And when you invest in notes, the mortgage notes, and I'll explain what they are in just a minute, it doesn't matter where you are. As long as you got a bank account that the money could go into, life is good. So what is an actual mortgage note? When you buy a car, when you buy pretty much anything, you have an IOU. And that's a note. Believe it or not, that's basically what a note is. An IOU saying that you'll pay this person this much money for this amount of time. Okay? So
what is the full form of IOU?
Oh, what?
What is the full form of IOU?
Oh, an IOU is like if I borrowed $10,000 from me or from you, you'd want to get paid back. So we have an agreement that we write out, and the short-term acronym that it's been known as is an IOU.
Oh, okay.
So when you buy a house, you promise to pay the bank or the seller or whoever it is a certain amount every month. Yeah. Okay. When I was dealing with the tenants and I was dealing with the moratorium on evictions and all these other things, about, let me think how long it's been now. Gosh, 7 years ago? Hard to believe. I found out about mortgage notes. Yeah. And I talk about this in my book. My dad and my uncle have been in real estate. Well, my dad passed away, but my uncle's still an agent. He's been licensed in California since 1950, and he is still practicing. His son helps him, but still. And I asked him about it. I said, have you ever heard of mortgage notes, Uncle? And he goes, yeah, I used to do them all the time. He would do them because a person, to make a transaction work, and he owned his own company, he would take back an IOU from whoever didn't have the money for the closing, and then he would give them the money for the closing with the promise that they would pay him back. Now, what a mortgage note investor does is we really don't go after the actual property anymore. We go after what we call the paper on it, that mortgage note. Mortgage notes are bought and sold every day all over the world, wherever they have them. It started back in the days of Caesar. So you will see sometimes somebody buys a property, and then a month or two later, they get a letter saying, make your payments to this person now. That's because the bank sold their note. So a note, when I invest in a note, I invest in the paper on that property. I don't personally own the property. I just own the investment that the bank made on it, or the seller made on it, whoever made it. I give them money, and then they assign that note to me. Now, what are the benefits? There's nobody I know that's ever had, like in the case of my roof, collapse. I didn't call the lender and say, hey, can you fix my roof? It broke. I had to come up with that money. So when you buy a note, because you don't own the property, the person in that property still has a responsibility to insure it and take care of it. Okay? Mm-hmm. And I will get a certain amount of money every month for as long as that note is in place. Like if I created a note and I tell the seller or the buyer, okay, you pay me $1,000 a month for 30 years. I know for a matter of fact, all things being equal, I'll get $1,000 a month for 360 payments. Okay? Same interest rate, same everything. Nothing changes. That's cash flow coming in. Yeah. And when I tell people I invest in the paper, first thing they say is, well, what if they quit paying you? And that's happened. Okay. And I take a different approach. And, I talked a little bit about this, about, I had a kind of a rough upbringing in the world due to the death of my mom. And I can empathize with people that don't have a place to live. And I'll leave it at that. I can empathize with people that come up with life speed bumps. Personally, I can totally empathize with that. So I reach out to them and ask them, what's going on? It's a simple conversation. Now, when I buy a note from someone that hasn't been paying and the person holding that note wants to get rid of it, I get it at a discount. Like if it's a $60,000 note or the balance, I don't pay $60,000. That's why we can make money that way. Yeah. I will talk to these folks, and I got to be real careful because I'm not a creditor, and say, what's going on? I have a conversation with them. And I've bought notes where the people's like, why do you even care? I said, well, I now own your note. I can do whatever the heck I want. I don't have shareholders. I don't have, investment requirements as far as bank regulators. I am me. You now bought a house that has a mortgage by Bank of Me. So I can make the decisions, whatever I want to do. Yeah. And I will always work with somebody. Now, if I've ever bought a note and I haven't come across a situation where someone says, I hate you and everything that you stand for, then I'm going to foreclose. They don't pay, they don't stay. I immediately start a foreclosure proceeding on them, hoping that they come around. But I actually work out deals to keep the people in their house. They have money invested in that house. They have their whole lives invested in that house. I have known people that are note investors such as myself that intend solely to foreclose and take back that house so they can rehab it and make more money. That's never been my business model. If I can't sleep at night, if I've done someone wrong, I am not, it sits on my conscience, and I just, I'm not going to get even into that. I'm not going to even go down that alleyway. I work with them, and I have been able to turn around all of my notes that way. Now, I don't deal with non-performing notes anymore because it's kind of an interesting market right now with that. So I kind of stay out of that and just stay with performing notes, and I stay with notes that the sellers made. I buy and sell those, and also mobile home notes, because mobile homes are right now an affordable housing alternative in the U.S. But people are people, and that's kind of what everybody's forgetting a little bit about nowadays, is everybody's got the same journey. You can't look at somebody and know their troubles and their travels that they've done. So you have to, accept the fact that they want the same things in life you do that I mentioned earlier, a home, family, a place to make a living, and try to build a good life for themselves. So that's my sole intention. Now, I'm only one person, but I do know a lot of us that feel the same way, and we run our businesses the same way. So dealing with the paper makes it easier on me. I don't have to worry about the tenants. I don't have to worry about property management. I don't have to worry about maintenance or anything. What's the negative? The negative is I will never get more than $1,000 a month in that example I give you. I can't call them and say, hey, I was thinking I'd really like to start padding my retirement. Can you give me $1,500 a month? Yeah. It's always going to be the same. And you have that control, and you have that knowledge, and you have those, understanding when you invest in notes. But it's just very portable for me. And I'm at the point now where I'm looking at, the cash flow I need, but I've taken a different approach now, especially with everything I've been through. I am serving people now. I'm helping people. I'm reaching out to folks to give them the same opportunities that I had. And I've had some great mentors throughout my life in real estate and also at NASA. That's what brought me to where I am now. So I'm giving back. I'm giving people an opportunity. There's people that got laid off. They want a different life. They don't want to go back to working at a cubicle farm. They don't want to work for somebody else. They don't even know what the options are or opportunities they may have. And I found that when I told people I was in real estate, their minds immediately went to what they can associate with that. Was I an agent? Was I an investor? Did I rehab houses? Do I a note holder? Yeah. I did all five. I did all five of the major careers in real estate by purpose and by accident. And now I'm teaching people basics of what they need and reaching out to folks to see if I can help them start a real estate career. And that's exactly what my whole focus is now, is helping others to navigate these crazy waters that we're in right now, to give them opportunities to find out what's possible and what's out there, and then showing them the ropes. You know, I've been pretty lucky. I've only invested in a couple of classes or seminars or something that I found was a total waste of time. So I work with folks to bring them, you know, hey, this is what you really need. This is the bare bones of what you actually need to get going on the path that you want to go on. And I talk to people. I mean, I'll give anybody, you know, an opportunity to ask me questions and think about, you know, what we could do, we strategize. I mean, that's what we're supposed to do with each other, is help each other, lift each other up. There's enough out there. Even taking notes, for example, I have certain buy criteria, and I have colleagues that have certain buy criteria. We're not scrambling after the same products. In fact, I have things that come across my desk that I don't invest in that particular area or with that type of investment. So I turn it over to one of my colleagues because I know that they'll do the same for me. We have to start collaborating. We start having to start caring. That's the bottom line. We all have to start really caring. And I go after what the most basic of what people really want and need. And that's a safe, clean place to call home that they could go to every day. And I go to extremes. Trust me, I go to extremes to get people in the houses and also keep them in the houses.
So to just break it down to explain what notes is. So basically, let's say there's a bank and there's someone who wants to buy a house but doesn't have enough cash right now. So what the person does is they goes to the bank and tells that they want to buy a house and they want some loan, and the bank provides them the loan. And while they provide the loan, they just have a document that is a representation or proof that, okay, you took the loan and you're going to repay the bank this amount of money. For the loan, the bank paid the borrower too. And what you do is you purchase the note itself, the evidence itself. And so what happens is that all of the ownership rights goes to you, right? So
exactly.
So if I have a question, why is the bank willing to sell the paper to you when it is originally the bank who made the investment or who gave the loan to the borrower for buying the house? Isn't it like a bank's financial loss, since they made the since they give the loan, but you are ultimately the person who is getting the repayment with interest. And this brings another question. Do you have to pay the same amount of money to buy the note that the bank had to lend out to the borrower? Or else how is the bank making money?
Yeah, that's excellent. One of the things is, do you pay face value for the note? Okay, when you give them, if they got $150,000 note, do you pay them $150,000? Generally, no. What we call discount it. Now, kind of going back to that whole process. Yes, banks sell notes, but generally not to people like me. Okay, they usually sell them to people like hedge funds or other banks. Okay, yep. They take $2 or $3 million worth of notes, bundle them up, and then sell them off to a hedge fund. Now, or different asset managers. We'll just put them in the term of asset managers. So these asset managers buy that couple $1 million. Then they get back to people like me and say, hey, this is what I'm selling. Now, why do they do that? It's velocity of capital. Okay, they make the loan. They're going to make money when they sell it, but they don't have that obligation on top of them. Now, the other thing that we help out banks with, if they have defaulted loans, okay, they don't want those defaulted loans. Okay. Man, my mind just went blank. For every dollar that a bank loans out, they have to have something to back that up. And it's usually like an 8-to-1 ratio. Okay. And when they start taking on bad loans and they take on all this other stuff, that drops it down, and that gets the interest of the regulators, the federal regulators that manage our money, FDIC and people like that. So they don't want to do that either.
Yeah.
And we make our money, you know, as a general rule, 99% of the time, the money in real estate is not made when you sell it. And people say, oh, that's when you make the money. No, it's when you buy it. You have to buy it correctly. So we buy these notes, you know, to make it an acceptable transaction to the person that's buying it from me and the person that's selling it to me. So the reason they do that is so they can get the money back and make more loans. And they just keep rolling it over and rolling it over. And, you know, it becomes lucrative for all of us. And every quarter they go through this little drill of what do we got on our books and what are we going to get rid of. So I've made my network based on the people that get these pools of notes, what they call it, a large amount, and say, hey, this is my, you know, these are the states I like to invest in if you ever come across anything. So they send that information to me, at which time I will analyze it. But that's just basically how the mortgage industry works.
Damn.
And a lot of people, by the way, are not going to banks right now to try to get loans. They're at the mercy of what that bank wants to say to you, what that bank wants to do. We go for private lenders. And say somebody's got a IRA or if they got money in their bank and they make the loan. If it's sitting in an IRA or, you know, self-directed IRA or something, it's making 0% interest. So if I can help them to make a loan that's bigger than 0% interest, they're going to be making money. So that's the other approach we take, you know, to try to buy these notes. And, you know, it's moving all the time.
I'd like to ask you one last, like, serious question. Is that earlier in the conversation you were talking about retirement and cash flow. So let's say I am someone, or like there's someone who is early in their life and they're wanting to plan out their life till retirement, or like they want to retire early or something like that, and they want to have that calculation of how much cash flow they need in order to like fund their expenses and lifestyle. But the thing is, there's something called inflation, and the rate of inflation is something, is basically, in terms of economics, I mean, it's something a bit complicated, but if I try to simplify it, it is the devaluation of money over time. And the thing is, the devaluation of rate of money money today might be 2%, but in the future it might become 5% or 10%. So if you even if you, let's say, consider inflation to be, let's say, 2%, for example, and if you calculate, let's say, till 2060 of how much money you need, I don't think it will be an accurate representation of how much actually money you will need, or actual cash flow you will need in order to, like, survive well for that long, because inflation rates will change. There will be economic ups and downs. So if you want to plan for your retirement, and if you want to retire early with enough cash or cash flow in your bank account, then how would you exactly do that, given that there are so many unknown variables about inflation rate, about the changes in economic condition and whatnot? What's your advice on that?
Well, that's great. That's a great question. One of the things I suggest is diversifying. Okay. I mentioned about notes staying essentially stagnant, but you're still getting that interest rate. Okay. When you buy property, a house, an apartment building, whatever, it goes up in value, right? So say you bought a house that you're using as a rental. Okay. It's set right now what that tenant is going to pay you. That's cash flow. Meanwhile, the price of the house is going up. I mean, the value of the house is going up, and rents increase. So, I mean, what you rent for $1,500 right now is probably not going to be $1,500 in a couple of years. So that increases. So someone in your position, You could buy some notes, some guaranteed income that you know is going to be there. And you could buy some properties, investment properties, to go ahead and cushion your retirement, because you know that the property values are going to go up and you know rents are going to go up. So that's how you offset the inflation, that rate. Inflation rates tend to be equal or a little bit lower than what actual rents are going for right now. I mean, rents right now are stupid sky high, but we're still looking at right now currently single digit inflation rates. So that's one approach. And what I do for example, sometimes I'll have a note, but I want to get money out because I saw another investment that will give me better returns. So I sell that note to somebody else, or I sell part of the payments to someone else. Now that gets into a little bit more of an advanced strategy, but you can actually sell the payments from the note. If I made a 360, 30-year loan, I can sell the first 5 or 10 years of the payments. The principal's not going down, but I get a huge chunk of cash that I can go ahead and put into other investments. So you kind of leverage, and you kind of count for inflation, and you change and adjust your rents as you go for what you need to keep track and keep up with inflation. But that's really the only way to do it. I have some money in the stock market. I don't like it as much as I do with real estate because I have no control over it. I have no idea. It's kind of like a crapshoot. But real estate, you have a little bit more control over your investment and your investment strategies because you're the one making the decisions.
Yeah. Most of my viewers are young people aged from 18 to 34 years old, and they're mostly from India and USA and Bangladesh. And I have a lot of my viewers are from USA and from India. So, and they're young people. So if they want to start out on real estate or get into the business of property, or any advice about life in general, or about what you have learned about life by getting so much experience, what kind of advice would you like to give to them?
Well, as far as life advice, I'd say be flexible, adapt and improvise, accept that change is inevitable, and change can be good, especially if you're a vending machine, but people don't like to adjust to change, and you're going to have to. You're going to have to accept that, young folks are going to have to accept that, things are going to come up. They have to be, more flexible than that. One of the things that, I discovered pretty early on was we would get engineers that we hired that made really nice income, but they had student loans, they lived with their parents, they had no credit or anything like that. A bank isn't going to touch them. So they go with the private lenders. One of the big questions I have is, how do I get started? I have no money. Okay. Yeah. How do you get started? A couple of different ways that you can get started is what's called a prehab. Okay, but let me back up even further. Contracts are assignable and sellable. So if I bought this really killer property for $150,000, but I don't want to do the rehab, I can fix it up, clean it out if it's junk and stuff in it, and then sell it to an investor for a profit. So that $150,000, I can sell them $175,000 if it's worth that, and I get $25,000. That's one of the ways to go ahead and start building a cushion, is rehabbing or prehabbing and selling. And others make a great living at wholesaling, where they find houses, definitely not on market. These are off-market properties that they find in their neighborhood, write a contract on it, and then sell that to an investor. Okay. I would say one of the best things to do right now, because everybody's jumping on the new construction, is go ahead and look at an older home. Now, you may or may not want to live there. You may fix it up and decide you want to live there, or you may fix it up and decide you want to sell it, or you may decide that you want to sell it with owner financing or hold it for a tenant. So even starting small can grow, and it's going to take time. You know, you talked about these, you know, get rich quick schemes.
For sure.
They're a dime a dozen. They're all over the place, and people will chase that shiny squirrel because they're like, oh, look, oh, wait, there's another thing. Oh, wait, there's the seminar. And they go all over the place. You stay focused. You decide what you want to do. If home ownership is your ultimate goal, then you can start small. You can even start with like a mobile home and get the money that you need, save up, get a house, and then turn that into an income property, right?
Sure.
Which you can change the rents and things as you go along with based on what the you know, rate of inflation is. So those are also good starts. Never say never. When people are looking at doing certain things, look at what's going around the corner, you know? Like I said, everybody's jumping on the brand new houses, but all these houses that were, you know, 15, 20 years old that are perfectly fine homes aren't getting buyers. And then also making it a creative deal where you can offer something to a seller that they would find beneficial and you would find beneficial. It's hitting that win-win situation, you know? And I would say start somewhere. If you have a company that offers you matching funds on a IRA or thrift savings plan or anything like that, take it. And then also realize that every dollar you spend now on that movie or that latte or, you know, going out to dinner is going to end up taken away from your ultimate plan. I mean, everybody's got to splurge and everybody's got to do their thing, but really look at what you're spending every month and looking at what you can stash away for your future investment. But start somewhere. That would be the best advice I would give, is be flexible and start your journey somewhere in this real estate investing or being an agent, taking side hustles, you know.
Yeah.
This is a time in life to be very creative, clever, and thinking outside the box, thinking outside the building, thinking every way you can to see, you know, how you can, you know, what can you do?
That's some great advice from you, Gil. Thank you for coming to my show and sharing all of your wealth and experience about real estate. And I'm sorry for the hardships that you went through, but
yeah, thank you.
I'm pretty sure that they give you great lessons and they're helping you to thrive through life. And you are helping others by coming on to our shows and sharing your knowledge. So thank you for coming on to my show, and thank you for trying to make the world a better place.
Oh, thank you very much. And one thing I would like to talk about with the hardships. Okay, if you know anything about a monarch butterfly, you'll see them coming out of the cocoon, and your first instinct is, oh, I need to help them. Well, if you help them, they don't get the strength in their wings to be able to survive. So I look at my life that way. You know, people say, well, whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Well, I also take it like everything that I've been through, I've survived. So anything coming up, I know I can survive. And it's made me stronger. So folks shouldn't really look at these trials and tribulations as anything other than opportunities that will be coming to them in the future.
Well, once again, a great perspective, a great advice. So thank you, Gil, for coming on to my show.
Thank you for having me. I've really enjoyed it. And I look forward to our next episode that we'll be doing together on my second favorite subject. No, actually, I'll lie. Rockets are probably my first favorite subject, and this real estate's my second.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that as well. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, and I look forward to it, and I really appreciate this opportunity to speak with your listeners today.
Thank you.